Okay. Good morning, Sarah. It's so
Good
nice
morning.
to talk with you.
Oh yeah, I'm so looking forward to it.
This is great. Are you in Hawaii?
No, I'm in Gig Harbor, Washington State.
Okay, lovely.
Yeah.
For people who are just meeting you for the first time, just to let them know that you are going through a very intense passage of illness, um,
Yeah.
and that you have, in my view, proven to have some superpowers. You totally do. You're totally modeling these like new human superpowers in ways that I have found absolutely remarkable.
Oh, thank
Yeah.
you.
And the number one is acceptance. You know,
Yes.
in our society, is acceptance, I don't know, it doesn't get the regard that the proper regard that I think that it should as being such a powerful, powerful thing.
Yeah.
And so if you can just talk about, do you feel like you've always had acceptance in your life for whatever showed up, or is it something you've newly developed?
Yeah. I'd be happy to talk about that. And I don't think we've mentioned yet what's going on specifically.
Okay.
So for those who haven't seen me on anything, I have been diagnosed with stage 4 brain cancer. And if it's on your left brain or your right brain, different parts, and what depending on what your genes are, things can change a bit. I have the worst place to have it on the left side. I'm also um, a left. See, I forget words, so don't be surprised by this. But I have a left brain. So those of us who are right-handed have oftentimes certain things happening in their left brain, like your ability to speak, to remember, things like that. That's on your left brain, and vice versa if you're left-handed, be on your right side. But anyway, long story short, I'm getting into details that aren't important. And the long story short is that this diagnosis came along, and when the doctor said to me, "Oh, Sarah, I'm so sorry. You have stage 4 brain cancer," and I just sat there and said, okay, okay, well, thank you so much for your work. And he was like, oh, I mean, Sarah, let me tell you about stage 4. I was like, well, I was a medical researcher for 20 years, so I know what stage 4 brain cancer is. Glioblastoma, for those of you who know that kind of stuff. And i've it's been over 17 months now. I have been told I'm getting close to the end, but I've lived a long time when the average is 7.5 months for me. And I honestly have been, even though I've cried. It's not that I haven't, she doesn't cry. There's something wrong with her. She's holding it in. No, I've cried, like watching family cry, seeing people hurt, that kind of thing. I've cried, but I haven't cried over this. And I think the reason why is that I'm so grateful for the life I've had. And I can't say that I was there, 20, 30 years ago. If I'd gotten this, I probably would have been freaked out. I probably would have been really worried. But now I'm at a point, and we can talk about this. I know this is one of the questions you had, like what happened when you were diagnosed. This was before I was diagnosed. I came to this place. So when I got diagnosed, I was not freaked out. Nothing's really changed. Um, I feel like I'm pretty much the same person, just really grateful.
Yeah, I think it's amazing that you were on a path to be a therapist, and specifically you were getting into work to help other people with difficult diagnoses. And so it's almost like one way or the other, the universe is going to bring you through this kind of a process. Do you want to say a few things about that? Because that's so fascinating.
Well, what is fascinating is that I'd been in medical research for ophthalmology, again, for those who are interested to know. Did that for 20 years, and I loved it, but I kept having this kind of, I don't know, something was coming to me constantly saying, go do something different, go do something different. I was like, why? I'm making good money. I'm loving this job. I get to travel every week. I get to, speak to physicians and teach them things. And I just couldn't understand why I kept hearing this, go do something else. And then I did always have an interest in psychology. And so when that idea came to me, I looked into it, started another master's degree, and the very first day of that program, I was so happy. I knew that's what I wanted to do. And so I ran off and got that degree, and now I'm forgetting why I brought this up. What was your question?
Oh, I was just talking about how it was sort of synchronicity that you would eventually, through that therapy degree and then what you got into, help people with difficult diagnoses.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So I think you might have thought that I'd chosen to go into cancer and death, and that wasn't what I chose to go into. But having said that, I've been vegan for almost 20 years, written vegan books. And so I met an oncology physician in Tacoma. She's a doctor who specializes mostly in breast cancer, but other cancers as well. And she said, "Oh my gosh, I would so love it if you come in and speak to my patients too, because you know the science, you've written these books, and they need to see how it really can affect cancer patients. Different cancers do better with a vegan diet, but some do quite well. And one of those is breast cancer, a lot of the breast cancer patients." So we talked about that. And then all of a sudden it was somehow I said to her, "Well, in addition to this area of veganism that we've been talking about, I just want you to know I started a new practice. So if you happen to have patients who need some treatment, I'd be happy to help." And she said, "Really, like I would literally get you a place in our office. You can work for yourself. You can come in as often as you want or as less as, I don't care. I would just love to have you in this office for these patients because some really struggle, even if they're given like stage 1 breast cancer, they know they're not going to die. But it's still all of a sudden like, one day I'm going to die." And it's quite freaky. And so that's how I ended up in that. I didn't choose to go into that on my own. It's not something I planned on doing. But there I was the year before I got diagnosed, teaching or working with cancer patients every day.
Yes.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, there's a beautiful synchronicity to that. Nothing happens by accident,
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Is that part of the acceptance, the fact that you feel that feeling that nothing happens by accident?
Um, it's funny. I will say I have this funny brain because there's this part of me that was in research for medical research for 20 years. So there's this part of me that's like, where's the science behind that? But then there's this there's this part of me that got into spirituality. I started reading different religions. I was brought up Christian, but kind of was like, I don't know, there's so many questions that I can't get answered. I started reading other books about 20 years ago. And it was about 10 years ago that I can tell you that in a minute, that really started changing things. And what was the question you asked me before that? Why did I bring that up?
Just, how you got sort of the path of, I was saying, is the belief that all things happen for a reason, part of your acceptance.
Yes. So yeah, when I got into different religions and learning different types of spirituality, that's when I started kind of looking back at my life or watching things happen those days, those weeks, those months, and going, whoa, wait a minute. Thinking about, this is one of my favorite examples to give people. There was a time, 500-600 years ago, I don't know, when people would say, "Oh, well, the earth is clearly flat. You can see it. If you just," you might not have ever lived by the ocean, but for those of us who have lived by the ocean, you can go see the end. So clearly you can see it. That's how we know it's flat. And nowadays, of course, we can all kind of go, that's kind of funny. Right. But I think there's so many things like that now that we don't understand, and that research may never be able to find, because I know, being a researcher, that there are a lot of things you can't find because there's too many other things that could be jumping in and affecting it. And so we say, well, how do you know that's diet? Because it could have been the person who was exercising more. Maybe they lived in a better part of town. It just gets really hard to look at things. So there might be things we can never prove, but they're happening. And that's what I started noticing as time has been going on. Like, wow, there are some things that have been happening that I can't explain at all, even as a researcher. So I'm on both sides of that. Right.
Well, you're someone too that has always lived by their values. They're so clearly expressed in your life, from, the need for research and facts, in your pharmaceutical career, to, stand the minute, it's almost like you read that book and found out how horrible factory farming was, and, the next day became vegan. Are there other examples in your life in which it's so clear for you to say, okay, this is my value and this is how it shows up in my life?
I would love to tell you one that I don't know if it's got a really strong, like, this happened and boom, I changed.
Right.
But what I will tell you, and I think this is something I've had a lot of people been asking me, like, how did you get this way? How are you, okay with this death? And how are you, and I said, I really did. I will say I've generally been a happy person because I was very blessed with, patients, parents who loved me. We weren't rich, but we had lived in a neighborhood with lots of other kids to play with. And, I've had a good life in general. But what I will say is that I was stuck with many other people, especially women, who get sucked into, you have to be thin, you have to look good, you have to marry high, all that kind of stuff. And I fell into that for a good 15 years. And I was trying to be thin and trying to look good. And, it was so, now I honestly couldn't care. I really couldn't care. But it took me years to get there. It's not like I could just read a book and go, oh, now I'm fine with that. I don't have to look great. I can eat whatever I want. No, it took me a long time to get to this place where I'm just grateful. It's so much. So yes, of course I'm grateful today. It's a beautiful day. There's no clouds, there's no rain. It's gorgeous. That's easy. I think most people are probably very grateful for that today. But I can be stuck in crappy weather and really bad traffic. Maybe I'm coming back from the airport and I'm stuck. And what would normally take, 35 minutes is now going to take an hour and a half. And I could be sitting there going, oh God, why is this guy driving like, oh my goodness. Oh, I could be looking, oh, and it's dark already. It's only 3:30. It's dark, Right. I could be living like that. And there was a time that I kind of did, that I would notice that stuff. So I'm not saying other people shouldn't be that way. I was that way. I get it. But over time, and this is what I would really love people to hear, is that over time, as I read more and more on different spirituality, you don't have to do that. Maybe you just make sure you're going on quiet walks. You don't have anything on telling you what's best for Democrats or Republicans, or don't watch that kind of stuff on TV. And you just kind of get away from all that. And then you just slowly start noticing things, and you start noticing, wow, look at those squirrels. They're so cute. I think they're in love with each other. You start noticing little things that you probably never even really noticed before. And to me, a big part of that, I will say, was I quit watching news back in 2001. Here's me forgetting words. What was that thing when the things fell down?
Yeah, the Twin Towers. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
When that happened, I noticed that for a whole month, I was sitting there like I'm sitting on the chair now. I'm sitting on the end of the chair. I sat in the living room with the TV on, watching the news for like a month after all that happened. And normally you watch TV, you're hanging out back. No, I was sitting on the edge, freaking out like this. Oh my God, what's happening? Oh my God, I heard they might be putting something in our mail. Oh my, it could kill us all. It could get in our water. This is how I went for like a full month after that. And then all of a sudden one day I was like, oh my God, wait a minute. Like none of that's happened in this last month. I'm terrified. I'm turning this off. And I turned it off, and I pretty much have never turned it on. Very rarely do I ever watch the news or regular TV. I'll watch, here's me not coming up with a word. One of those things that you can just watch a movie on.
Sure.
Netflix.
Yeah.
I watch that kind of stuff, but I just don't turn on the TV, especially the news or any kind of shows that make you feel like you have to be thin, you have to be sexy, you have to be rich. You better be Democratic, or you better be Republican. Like all of that stuff.
Right.
I don't touch it. And I think that's really helpful.
Yeah. I had to stop watching the news too. It's just being triggered, and then we get addicted to being triggered.
Yeah.
And what's the next thing I need to be anxious about?
Yeah.
Or the next thing versus just, I just go for a walk. Yeah. Let's go for a walk. Let's enjoy what's around us. Let's accept that the life we have has been given to us as a blessing. And are we taking advantage of that?
Yeah. And you do a great thing. You do all that painting.
Yeah.
And your painting is amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. And what I would love people to hear is that I have friends on Maui that paint a lot, and some of them are actually quite good, and some of them aren't. I'm one of them who's not. But it doesn't matter. It's, we can all look at a piece of painting, and some of us will love it, and some of us will be like, it's okay. It's all just what people prefer. So have fun, like go out and do some painting or some drawing or that kind of thing. I think is so much better than turning on CNN or Fox News or any of that stuff.
I'm very lucky that I tend to have a strong inclination or inspirational seeds get planted, and I follow them, and I'm used to following them. And that's what happened with the painting, as I was sort of done with writing a book and marketing it. And I just said, what next? And I said, I will paint until I know what next. And that's how that sort of started. Just take something I knew I liked and follow that inclination without worrying or whether I was changing the world or I was, because I think energetically the things we do, like you being on this path, have such far-ranging benefits to other people that we'll never know the far-ranging benefits.
Yeah.
And that's why I admire so much you doing these interviews and you posting your stories and your tips for people, because that's going to touch people in ways you'll never know. We change the world, not for ourselves, but for the next generation. I love that thought. We lay down the love we can in the field that we're existing in.
Yeah.
And part of your love of animals is a huge part of who you are. That just, look at you, you just lit
I
up.
love animals.
Right? So no, I didn't know that Leilani Farms is land that you own in Hawaii.
Yeah. So anyone who's been to Maui, you may or may not have heard of this. It's called Leilani Farm Sanctuary. And they, I don't run it. We own the property, so we get to see it all the time. And the woman that we bought the property from still lives on it and runs it. And her name's Laura Lee, and Laura Lee does this amazing job of saving animals that are about ready to be killed somehow, usually for food, and it keeps them saved. And then you can come by and meet them all. And if you've never held a chicken or petted a donkey or a pig, or you can just learn all about it, and a lot of people hear that. And I think this is one of the things I love. It can be hard sometimes, but also so great, and that's really getting into something. So a lot of people have been eating chicken. I ate chicken for 30 years almost. And then when I read about them, and then when I held one, it was like, love you, I'm not eating you. So I'm not a huge, I understand that everyone's different. This is part of my spirituality. Everybody's different. Everyone believes differently. And so if you eat meat, it's not like I hate you. Oh, that person eats meat. But what I do want to say for people who are always, eating all that stuff still, is that how it's being raised in our country is horrifying. And if we knew that dogs and cats were being treated that way, we would have taken care of that years ago. We would have been just horrified. But they keep all that kind of quiet so that we don't really see it. And those of us who have seen it and looked at it and read on it, it's like, holy cow. And so for that reason, I'm really glad to hear that they're coming out with here's me losing words. I don't remember if it was beef or what it was, but they're coming out with some kind of meats that are being brought up by the cells. So you don't have to raise the cow and then have a horrible life. This is actually what's coming out, and I'm so glad about that. And I'm hoping that 10 years from now, that's just going to be how most meats are. They're real meat. They are real meat. They just came from cells rather than from poor animals who were horrified.
Right. Which is so interesting. Yeah, I remember one of those, I've in my book, I talked about those alternative communities, and I believe the one in Italy they did a lot of research. I think they might have even begun some of that research on growing meat kind of thing versus, which is fascinating.
Yeah.
So is there anything about yourself now that you know about yourself that you didn't know or didn't appreciate about yourself a year and a half ago prior to your diagnosis?
No. And I'll tell you this, because I do think this is so important. Everybody keeps looking at me and like you started, you're this amazing person. I'm not an amazing person. What I'll tell you, and everyone can learn this, is that I just started reading different spirituality books, different types of religions. What do I believe? I had been taught as a kid, believe in being a Christian.
Right.
And the idea when I was in my 20s of walking away from that, that just terrified me. Like, how could I can't walk away from that. It'd be terrible. But over time, I became more okay with it. Like, walk toward whatever is really speaking out to you. And I didn't find one that said everything in that is perfect for me. I'm now Buddhist, or I'm now whatever. Nothing, but they all have things, including Christianity. They all have things that as I read through them, I go, oh. And there's other things I read through and go, I don't think so.
Yeah.
But that's okay. For me, I feel like that's okay, because what it's done is it's made me this person that, I'm focusing on reading that kind of stuff. Or this is what happened. I meant to tell you this. This is what happened 10 years ago. I've been reading all this stuff for a good 20 years, but being a reader, I love to read. I would open the book and read, oh, that was good. Oh, that's good. It would tell you things like, make sure you are, here's me forgetting an obvious word, when you just get quiet.
Present.
No.
Quiet. Still?
You're getting there. The word I'm looking for, when people meditate.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I got into this area about 10 years ago when we bought our place on Maui. And there are so many amazing people on Maui that are so spiritual in different ways. They often believe different things. But what's amazing about them is that they've come to whatever they believe. And one of the things that my friend told me, he's a great friend now, Barry, I think it was him who told me about 10 years ago, well, I asked him a question like, oh, do you do this? Or, oh, he's like, oh yeah. And I remember he took us out to what's it called? Oh Lord,
That's okay.
Kirtan. So a lot of people haven't heard of this. It's a type of
Singing.
Music. Yeah. Singing that comes mostly from India.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say Indiana. I meant India, like way across the planet. And what he taught me was, look, don't just read. Go and experience things. Go to kirtans. Go to what did I just talk about? The quiet one.
The meditation.
Meditation. Like all these things, these different ones teach you to do. Read about them all and try them, and stick with the ones you really feel are having an effect that you're liking. And so I did. And I got to tell you, I got into, here I'm forgetting the word again, the music, kirtan. I got into kirtan so much. I listened to it for 2 or 3 hours a day. It is so, and the funny thing is I remember asking Barry, what does that mean? When they say, and I would throw out some, because it's not in English usually.
Right.
And I'd throw, what does that mean? He's like, pretty much, thank God, thank God. Okay. Well, what does this one mean? Because I've heard this one in like four songs today. Oh, thank God. And so I said, okay, well, what about this one? And he said, pretty much they all say thank God. And he'd been doing it since the 70s,
Wow.
And I thought, that's all I need to know. Because sometimes if I read details, I'm like, oh, wow, they were anti-female, or, oh my gosh, they were this or that, decades and decades and hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago. I don't really need to know that kind of stuff, because it makes me, really, I don't buy into that. But if I just sit there with anything, getting Christianity too, if I just sit there with, be kind, be loving, be nice, help, that kind of stuff. And what I choose to believe about God, I don't need to tell you, it's everybody can believe whatever they want. I just sit with all that now, and I'm just so happy and so grateful. I mean, all the time I'm just feeling grateful. It's rare that I'm like, wow. I mean, it can happen once in a while, but it's pretty rare. Now it's just like, if somebody says, I can't believe that neighbor of yours, I go, yeah, but you should have seen the other neighbor, or, there's something I can say that I'm focusing on, going, wow, this is so much better, or wow, we're lucky we have this. And yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's that ability to change perspective when you catch yourself in what is not optimal for you, and it's not optimal for you, like turning off the news, or focusing on the wrong thing that feels like a downer, or or focusing on something you don't feel like you can do anything about. Yet you're so good about being present for those things you can do. I can decide not to eat meat. I can decide to go listen to beautiful music. I can decide to go walk on the beach. I can appreciate my parents and my husband. And, that to me is almost, the definition of humanity as we would like everybody to be
Yeah.
able to be like that. Could you imagine the world if, we all had that kind of grace and
Yeah.
realized that we were the curators of the grace. We choose it.
Yeah. And you know what I'd like to say about that is everybody just, if this is interesting to you and you're thinking, wow, I'd like to get there, then just start doing it a little bit every day. It's not, again, it's not a book you're going to read or an event you're going to have where you're going to go, oh my gosh, and totally change. You might have some books or some events that make good changes and,
Right.
wow, that was a big one. But it's just time and just learning over time. And that's how I sit here now. And I get this diagnosis. I'm 49 now. It was at the end of my 47th year. And when the doctor said, Sarah, I hate to tell you this, you've got an average of 7.5 months. I think you'll go longer because you're healthy and you're vegan. I was like, oh yeah. But he said, about 1% live in 5 years, and only about 19% live after 1 year. So, you're gonna be gone from this. And I said, okay. And I literally, what was coming through my head was, I have had 47 back then, amazing years. I mean, I've had so few bad times in my life. I can think of 2 bad times. And that's it. I have, if you look at 47 years, I probably had 45 years or 43 years, something like that were unbelievably good, And it's not that I was in a perfect place. There were certainly many days that I worried, oh, I wish I were thinner, and oh, I wish I could get into a size 6, or, of course I had those things, but in general, I was happy. The beauty of it is now, honest to God, I don't care how much I weigh. I don't care. I mean, I used to have, as this long curly hair that was naturally curly and quite pretty, and I hardly had to do a thing to it.
Right.
And it mostly came off. I have a tiny bit left that my husband wanted me to keep. So I look nutty, I don't wear makeup anymore because on Maui, I just learned, like, that's not who I am. That's not nobody cares, in our group on Maui. So we rarely wear makeup, and I just love it. I love it. I love being me. And I think I've never had one friend say, hey, honey, you have gained some weight. You might want to. I've not had one friend say that.
Right. Well,
And
it's somebody who's seen you through different periods of your life. I didn't know you probably 20, maybe almost 20 years ago now we met, or 15. It was probably 15, around 2000.
Oh, more than that, yeah.
2006, when you were doing one of your books, and that was, so it's been such a privilege to even be connected to the energy that is Sarah. And if you had to say to people, what is the essence of you? Is it those words you used before, kindness, helpful, grateful? Are those things any other essences that are?
I would say 2. One is being grateful. That's one. We've already talked about that. The other one is, this won't surprise a lot of you, be here now.
Oh yeah, Ram Dass. Yeah.
That's the famous Ram Dass thing. And I found that to be so true, that when I'm here, like sitting here talking to you, I'm seeing you smile. I'm hearing the birds chirping. I'm not looking at the time going, I'm just here, and I'm so happy to be here. And I'm sitting here remembering the times that we've been doing things together in the past, 20 years ago, 15 years ago. And I just think, God, see, I'm still getting to talk to her after all these years. I'm so lucky. And that's what's going through my head as I'm looking at your face.
Oh, it's so nice.
I could be sitting here. If this had happened 20 years ago, I would have been going, oh God, I hope I look good. I hope I have my makeup on right. Okay, do lighting good. It's gone. It's gone. And it's such a happy place to be. So I'm telling people, if that sounds good to you and you want to get there, it's probably not going to be an overnight thing. It wasn't for me, but just work on that and turn off the crap on the TV. Quit watching the horrible magazines, reading those that make you feel like you have to lose weight or you have to look better. It's okay. Just be you and be kind.
Yeah.
and that'll take you so far. So
Well, those are beautiful words. I think we'll end with those because that's just lovely. So lovely. And I love you dearly. And yes, thank you for bringing all your wonderful energy today for this conversation. And
thanks for having me.
okay, bye.
Bye.